The chance encounter. Elena Martinez stood in front of the massive painting, her eyes tracing every brushstroke with the dedication of someone who truly understood art. At 28, she had spent 5 years working as a curator at the Sterling Art Gallery in New York City. Her salary was modest, her apartment tiny, but her passion for art was boundless. She wore a simple blue dress that day, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, completely unaware that her life was about to change forever. "Remarkable, isn't it?" a deep voice said beside her. Elena turned to find herself looking into the most captivating blue eyes she had ever seen. The man was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, with perfectly styled dark hair that had just a hint of silver at the temples. He looked like he had stepped out of a luxury magazine. "Yes, it is," Elena replied softly. "Monet had a way of capturing light that makes you feel like you're standing right there in the garden." The man smiled, and it was a smile that could melt ice. "You know your art." "I'm Marcus. Marcus Blackwood." Elena's eyes widened slightly. Everyone in New York knew that name. Marcus Blackwood was one of the youngest billionaires in the city, known for his successful tech investments and real estate empire. He was also known for being on every eligible bachelor list in the country. "Elena Martinez," she said, shaking his extended hand. His grip was firm and warm. "Would you like to have coffee with me, Elena? I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on art." The whirlwind romance. That coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a weekend in the Hamptons. Within 3 months, Elena found herself living in a fairy tale she never thought possible. Marcus was everything she had dreamed of in a partner. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in everything she said. He would send flowers to her gallery, surprise her with tickets to art exhibitions in Paris and Rome, and hold her hand as they walked through Central Park. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," Marcus told her one evening as they sat on his penthouse balcony, overlooking the glittering New York skyline. "You're real. You care about things that matter." Elena's heart swelled with love. She had grown up in a small apartment in Brooklyn after her father died when she was 16. Her mother worked 2 jobs to put her through college. Elena had learned early that money couldn't buy happiness, but love and passion made life worth living. "I love you, Marcus," she said, the words flowing naturally from her heart. "I love you too, Elena. More than you could ever know," he replied, pulling her close. But what Elena didn't see was the cold calculation in Marcus's eyes as he looked past her at the city below. What she didn't know was that Marcus had researched her thoroughly before that chance meeting at the gallery. He knew that her late father, Roberto Martinez, had been a silent partner in a small but valuable tech company before his death. The shares had passed to Elena, who had no idea of their worth. Marcus needed those shares to complete a major business deal. Marriage was simply the easiest way to gain control of them. The dream wedding. 6 months after they met, Marcus proposed to Elena on a beach in Santorini at sunset. The ring was a stunning 5-carat diamond that caught the fading light like a star. Elena cried tears of joy as she said yes, unable to believe that such happiness was real. The wedding was held at the Plaza Hotel, a lavish affair that made the society pages of every major newspaper. Elena felt like Cinderella as she walked down the aisle in a custom Vera Wang gown, her mother crying happy tears in the front row. Over 300 guests attended, including politicians, celebrities, and business tycoons. "You look like an angel," Marcus whispered as he lifted her veil at the altar. Elena's best friend from college, Rachel, served as her maid of honor. "Are you sure about this?" Rachel had asked the night before. "It all seems so fast. Do you really know him?" "I know that I love him," Elena had replied. "And he loves me. That's all that matters." But Rachel's words lingered like a shadow Elena couldn't quite shake. The honeymoon phase fades. The first 3 months of marriage were blissful. Marcus and Elena lived in his penthouse, and Elena quit her job at the gallery at Marcus's insistence. "You don't need to work anymore," he had said. "Focus on enjoying life. Travel. Pursue your hobbies." First, Elena loved the freedom. She spent her days visiting museums, painting in the studio Marcus had set up for her, and planning charity events. But slowly, she began to notice changes in her husband. Marcus started coming home later and later. When she asked about his day, His answers were vague and dismissive. He spent hours on his phone, stepping out of the room to take calls. When Elena tried to join him for business dinners, he would make excuses about why she couldn't attend. "It's boring business talk, darling," he would say, kissing her forehead absently. "You'd hate it." Elena tried to ignore the growing knot in her stomach. She told herself that this was normal, that all marriages went through adjustments. But deep down she felt something shifting, something breaking. The mysterious woman. It was on a rainy Tuesday evening when Elena's world began to crumble. She had decided to surprise Marcus at his office with his favorite Italian takeout for dinner. The security guard at Blackwood Enterprises knew her and waved her through with a smile. As Elena approached Marcus's corner office on the 45th floor, she heard laughter. A woman's laughter, light and flirtatious. She pushed open the door and froze. Marcus was sitting on the edge of his desk, leaning close to a stunning blonde woman in a red power suit. The woman's hand was on Marcus's arm, her face tilted up toward his with an intimacy that made Elena's blood run cold. "Elena!" Marcus jumped up, his expression shifting from surprise to annoyance in a split second. "What are you doing here?" I brought you dinner," Elena said weakly, holding up the bag of food. The blonde woman turned, her green eyes assessing Elena with barely concealed contempt. "So this is the wife," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. "Elena, this is Sophia Loran, my business partner," Marcus said quickly. "We're working on a major acquisition." "Business partner?" Elena repeated, looking between them. "You've never mentioned her before." Sophia smiled, but it was a smile like a knife. "Marcus and I go way back. We're very close." "That's enough, Sophia," Marcus said sharply. Then to Elena, "Go home. I'll be there later. We're in the middle of something important." Elena felt her eyes sting with tears, but she refused to cry in front of them. She set the food down on a chair and left without another word. The seeds of doubt. That night, Marcus didn't come home until after midnight. Elena pretended to be asleep as he slipped into bed beside her. Her mind raced with questions and fears. Who was Sophia really? Why had Marcus never mentioned her? And why did the way they looked at each other make Elena feel like an outsider in her own marriage? The next morning, Elena made a decision. She would find out the truth herself. While Marcus was in the shower, she grabbed his laptop from his briefcase. Her hands trembled as she opened it. She had never snooped on her husband before, but something told her she needed to see what he was hiding. The laptop was password protected, but Elena tried the combination of numbers Marcus used for everything. His birthday. It opened. Her heart pounded as she clicked through his emails. Most were boring business correspondence. But then she found a folder labeled SM, Sophia's initials. Inside were dozens of emails between Marcus and Sophia, dating back months before Elena had even met Marcus. Elena's breath caught as she read. "The Martinez girl is perfect. Naive, trusting, and she has no idea what those shares are worth. Once I marry her and get the shares transferred, we'll finally have the leverage we need for the quantum merger. Then we can move forward with our original plan." Sophia's response. "You always were good at playing the long game, darling. Just make sure she doesn't get suspicious. We're so close now. After the divorce, we can finally be together properly." The truth revealed. Elena's hand shook so badly she almost dropped the laptop. She felt like she couldn't breathe, like the walls were closing in around her. Everything, the chance meeting at the gallery, the romantic courtship, the proposal, the wedding, all of it had been a lie. A carefully orchestrated con to steal her inheritance. She quickly scrolled through more emails, finding detailed discussions of her father's company shares, legal strategies for transferring them after marriage, and even a timeline for when Marcus planned to file for divorce. The most recent email was from just 2 days ago. "Almost done here. The share transfer paperwork goes through next week. After that, I'll start creating distance. We'll initiate the divorce in 3 months. Make it look like we grew apart. She's so emotional and trusting, she probably won't even fight it." Elena slammed the laptop shut, her whole body trembling with rage and heartbreak. She had given this man everything, her love, her trust, her life. And he had been playing her from the very beginning. She heard the shower turn off. In moments, Marcus would come out, smile at her, kiss her cheek, and continue his performance of being a loving husband. But Elena couldn't pretend anymore. She couldn't look at him without seeing the truth. When Marcus emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, Elena was standing by the window, the laptop open on the bed behind her. "Elena? What's wrong?" he asked, his voice full of fake concern. Elena turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "How could you?" she whispered. Marcus's eyes flicked to the laptop, and his expression changed instantly. The mask of the loving husband disappeared, replaced by cold indifference. "So you finally figured it out," he said, his voice flat. "I was wondering how long it would take." The confrontation. Elena felt her knees weaken, but she forced herself to stay standing. "Was any of it real? Did you ever care about me at all?" Marcus laughed, a harsh sound that made Elena flinch. "Care about you? Elena, you were a business transaction. A very profitable one, I might add." At that moment the bedroom door opened and Sophia walked in, as if she owned the place. She was wearing one of Marcus's shirts, her long legs bare. "Oh good, the truth is finally out," Sophia said, sitting on the edge of the bed like she belonged there. This charade was getting exhausting. Elena stared at them in horror. How long have you two been?" "The whole time," Marcus said simply, pulling on his clothes. "Did you really think I'd marry someone like you for love? You're sweet, Elena, but you're nobody. You worked in a gallery making $40,000 a year. You wore clothes from department stores. You're not in my league." Each word was like a physical blow. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold herself together. "But I loved you," she said, her voice breaking. "And that made you easy to manipulate," Sophia added cruelly. "God, you were so eager to believe every word. It was almost too easy." Marcus walked over to his dresser, pulling out a folder. "Here," he said, tossing it at Elena's feet. "Divorce papers. Already filled out. You sign them, you get to keep the penthouse and a small settlement. Refuse and we'll make your life hell. We have lawyers who will bury you. You'll end up with nothing." Elena bent down and picked up the folder with shaking hands. Inside were legal documents that would end her marriage and sign away her father's shares. In exchange, she would get the apartment and $100,000. It was nothing compared to what the shares were worth. "You planned this all along," Elena said, more to herself than to them. "The shares are transferring next week, and then you were going to divorce me and take everything." "Finally catching on," Marcus said mockingly. "Sign the papers, Elena. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The breaking point. Elena looked up at them, Marcus, the man she had loved with all her heart, and Sophia, the woman who had helped destroy her life. She saw no remorse in their eyes, no guilt, no humanity. They saw her as nothing more than an obstacle that had served its purpose. Something inside Elena broke in that moment, but something else was born. A spark of rage, of determination, of survival. "No," she said quietly. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "I said no," Elena repeated louder this time. "I won't sign anything." "You want a divorce? You'll have to drag me through court. You want my shares? You'll have to fight for them. I may have been naive enough to trust you, but I'm not stupid enough to make this easy for you." Sophia laughed. "This should be entertaining. Watching you try to fight us with your non-existent resources and connections." "You have until the end of the week to get out of this apartment," Marcus said coldly. "After that, I'm changing the locks. And trust me, Elena, you don't want to challenge me. I will ruin you. I will make sure you never work in this city again. I will destroy every aspect of your pathetic little life." Elena gathered what dignity she had left and walked toward the bedroom door. She paused in the doorway and turned back to look at them one last time. "You're wrong about one thing," she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her face. "I do have something you don't. I have nothing left to lose. And that makes me more dangerous than you could ever imagine." With that, Elena walked out, leaving behind the life she had thought was real, stepping into an uncertain future that would ultimately forge her into someone neither Marcus nor Sophia could have anticipated. The fairy tale was over. But Elena's real story was just beginning. Part 2: The Fall and Rising. The lowest point. Elena stood on the street outside the penthouse building. a single suitcase in her hand containing everything she had managed to grab before Marcus's security team escorted her out. It had only been 4 days since their confrontation, but Marcus had worked fast. True to his word, he had changed the locks and had his lawyers file emergency orders claiming Elena was unstable and a threat to his property. The October rain fell in cold sheets, soaking through Elena's thin jacket. She had nowhere to go. Her pride wouldn't let her return to her mother's small apartment in Brooklyn. The woman had worked so hard to give Elena a better life, and Elena couldn't bear to admit how completely she had failed. Her friend Rachel had moved to California 2 months ago for a new job. Elena wandered the streets of Manhattan, pulling her suitcase behind her, until she found herself in front of a women's shelter in the Lower East Side. The sign outside read Hope Harbor. Elena had donated to this place before, had attended their fundraising galas when she was Mrs. Marcus Blackwood. Now she was about to walk through those doors not as a benefactor, but as someone who needed help. "Can I help you?" a kind-faced woman asked as Elena hesitated at the entrance. I need a place to stay," Elena whispered, the words like broken glass in her throat. The harsh reality. The shelter was clean but crowded, filled with women whose stories of betrayal and hardship made Elena realize she wasn't alone in her pain. She was given a bed in a room she shared with 5 other women and a small locker for her belongings. That night, as Elena lay in the unfamiliar bed listening to the sounds of the city and the quiet crying of another woman across the room, she finally let herself fall apart. She cried for the love that had never been real, for the future she had imagined, for the trust she had so freely given. But most of all, she cried for the person she had been: naive, trusting, blind to the predators who saw kindness as weakness. The next morning, Elena woke with swollen eyes and a pounding headache. She needed to find a job, needed to get back on her feet. But when she started making calls to galleries and museums where she had worked or had connections, she hit wall after wall. "I'm sorry, Elena, but we've decided to go with another candidate," they would say, their voices uncomfortable. After the 5th rejection, a former colleague finally told her the truth in a hushed phone call. "Marcus Blackwood's office has been making calls. He's blacklisting you across the entire art world in New York. No one wants to risk angering him by hiring you." Elena felt her last hope crumble. Marcus wasn't just taking her inheritance. He was taking her ability to earn a living, her professional reputation, everything. The downward spiral. Weeks turned into a month. Elena applied for any job she could find: waitressing, retail, cleaning services. But something always went wrong. Either the employer would suddenly change their mind about hiring, or they would Google her name and find the carefully planted articles about the unstable woman who had to be removed from billionaire Marcus Blackwood's home. Elena's savings dwindled to nothing. She skipped meals to save money. Her clothes became worn. The woman who had once worn designer gowns and dined at Michelin-starred restaurants now stood in line at soup kitchens. The worst part wasn't the hunger or the cold or the exhaustion. It was the shame. The feeling that everyone was looking at her, judging her, seeing her as someone who had deserved what happened. People who had smiled at her when she was Marcus's wife now crossed the street to avoid her. One particularly brutal day in early December, Elena sat on a bench in Central Park, the same park where Marcus had once held her hand and promised her forever. She had $12 left to her name. No job, no prospects, no hope. "Maybe they were right," she whispered to herself. "Maybe I am nothing." For a moment, Elena considered giving up entirely. The Charles River wasn't far. It would be so easy to walk away from all this pain. But then she thought of her father, Roberto Martinez. He had come to America with nothing, had built a small business through sheer determination and intelligence. He had taught Elena that worth wasn't measured by bank accounts or social status, but by character and persistence. "Papa," Elena whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Help me find the strength." The unexpected angel. The next day, Elena was sitting in the shelter's common room, staring at a newspaper's job listings with little hope, when she heard a voice she recognized. "Elena Martinez? Is that really you?" Elena looked up to see an older Chinese man with kind eyes and silver hair standing before her. It took her a moment to place him, and then memory flooded back. James Chen. He had been her father's friend and business partner decades ago. before her father left the tech industry to pursue other ventures. Mr. Chan, Elena said, standing quickly, acutely aware of her worn clothing and the shelter setting. James Chen's eyes were full of compassion, not judgment. Your father was one of my dearest friends. When I heard about what happened to you, I had to find you. You heard? Elena asked, shame burning in her cheeks. I know everything, Elena. Marcus Blackwood's treachery, the stolen shares, your blacklisting. James shook his head sadly. Your father would be heartbroken to see you like this. But he would also be proud of your strength in surviving it. Elena felt tears welling up. I'm not strong, Mr. Chan. I'm broken. I have nothing left. James sat down beside her. That's where you're wrong. You have something Marcus Blackwood will never have. You have integrity. And you have your father's brilliant mind, which he always said you inherited. Roberto was a genius, Elena. Did you know that the tech shares Marcus stole from you were originally your father's algorithm? An authentication system that was years ahead of its time. Elena shook her head. I never knew the details. I was only 16 when he died. Your father was developing artificial intelligence for art authentication before most people knew what AI was. He sold his stake because he wanted to focus on his family, on you. But that technology is the foundation of a multi-billion-dollar industry now. James looked at Elena intently. What if I told you that you have your father's genius inside you? That with the right guidance and opportunity, you could build something even greater than what was stolen from you. The offer that changed everything. Elena wanted to believe him, but years of failure and abuse had left her confidence shattered. Mr. Chan, I appreciate your kindness, but I'm not my father. I studied art history, not technology. I wouldn't even know where to begin. James smiled. Your father didn't start with technology either. He started with a problem he wanted to solve and the determination to solve it. Elena, I run a tech incubator called Chun Innovations. We fund and mentor promising startups. I want to offer you a position and an opportunity. A position? Elena repeated, hardly daring to hope. Start as my executive assistant. Learn the business from the inside. Use our resources, our connections, our expertise. And in your free time, I want you to work on something for yourself. Your father once told me you had an incredible eye for art, that you could spot a forgery from across a room. What if we combined that gift with modern technology? What if we created an authentication system that could revolutionize the art world? Elena's mind was racing. But Mr. Chun, I have no money, no resources, no. You have me, James interrupted gently. And you have your father's legacy. Roberto helped me when I had nothing. Let me help his daughter now. Not out of charity, Elena, but because I see in you what your father saw, potential waiting to be unleashed. For the first time in months, Elena felt something stir inside her. Not hope exactly, but something more powerful. Determination. What would I need to do? She asked. First say yes. Then work harder than you've ever worked in your life. Learn, grow, build. And when you're ready, we'll show Marcus Blackwood exactly what a mistake he made when he underestimated Elena Martinez. Elena stood up, extending her hand to James. Yes, I accept. And Mr. Chan? Thank you for seeing me as more than my circumstances. James shook her hand firmly. Your father once told me that gold doesn't lose its value just because it's covered in mud. It just needs to be cleaned and polished. Let's get you polished, Elena. You have an empire to build. The transformation begins. James Chun arranged for Elena to move into a modest but clean apartment near his company headquarters in Brooklyn. It wasn't the penthouse she had lost, but it was hers, earned through her agreement to work and learn, not given as a gilded cage. On her first day at Chun Innovations, Elena arrived an hour early, dressed in a simple but professional outfit James had helped her purchase. She was nervous but determined. The office was a converted warehouse, full of young entrepreneurs working on everything from artificial intelligence to sustainable energy. Everyone here was once where you are, James told her as he showed her around. Broken by life, counting on a second chance. We don't care about your past here. We care about what you're going to build in the future. Elena's role as executive assistant meant she attended every meeting, read every pitch, learned every aspect of how tech companies operated. She absorbed information like a sponge. But more importantly, she began to see patterns: how businesses succeeded and failed, how innovation happened, how power worked. In the evenings and on weekends, Elena worked on her own project in a small lab James provided. She started researching art authentication methods, studying the latest developments in artificial intelligence and machine learning, teaching herself to code through online courses in sheer determination. The work was exhausting. There were many nights when Elena fell asleep at her desk, many moments when she wanted to quit. But every time doubt crept in, she remembered Marcus's cruel laughter, Sophia's mocking smile, and the feeling of having everything stolen from her. That memory became fuel for her fire. The mentor's wisdom. James Chun proved to be more than a benefactor. He became the mentor and father figure Elena desperately needed. Over lunch one day, 3 months into her new life, he shared his own story. 20 years ago, I lost everything in a business deal that went bad, James told her. My partner had embezzled money, framed me for it, and disappeared. I was nearly sent to prison. I lost my company, my reputation, everything. Your father was one of the only people who believed in me, who helped me when everyone else turned away. I never knew that, Elena said softly. Roberto had a saying: the measure of a person isn't how they act when they're winning, but how they rise after they fall. You're rising now, Elena. Every day you come here, every hour you spend learning, every moment you resist the temptation to give up, that's you rising. James leaned forward. But I need to warn you about something. Revenge is a powerful motivator, but it's a dangerous foundation. If you build your empire solely to hurt Marcus Blackwood, you'll lose yourself in the process. Build it because you want to create something meaningful. Build it because you deserve success. Build it because you have a gift to share with the world. If revenge comes as a side benefit, so be it. But it can't be your only goal. Elena considered his words carefully. What if I want both? To create something meaningful and to show them they were wrong about me. James smiled. Then you're learning wisdom faster than I did. Just remember, the best revenge is living well and building something they could never touch or taint. The breakthrough. 6 months into her transformation, Elena made a breakthrough. She had been working on an algorithm that could analyze brushstrokes, pigment composition, and artistic patterns using artificial intelligence. It was like facial recognition but for paintings. The system could identify an artist's work with 98% accuracy and detect forgeries that even expert human eyes might miss. James, look at this, Elena said excitedly, showing him the results of her latest test. The system had correctly identified 3 forgeries in a batch of 20 paintings, including one that had fooled experts for years. James examined the data, his eyes widening. Elena, do you understand what you've created here? This could transform the entire art authentication industry. Insurance companies, auction houses, private collectors, they'd all need this technology. It still needs refinement, Elena said, but she couldn't keep the pride from her voice. But yes, I think it could work. More than work. This is revolutionary. James looked at her seriously. Are you ready to take this to the next level? To start your own company? Elena felt fear and excitement war within her. A year ago, she had been a broken woman living in a shelter. Now she was on the verge of becoming an entrepreneur. Yes, she said firmly. I'm ready. Building the foundation. Elena named her company Veritas Art Systems. Veritas meaning truth in Latin. With James's guidance and initial seed funding from his venture capital network, Elena began building her business. She hired a small team of developers and art experts, people who believed in her vision. The work was grueling. Elena often worked 18-hour days, perfecting her algorithm, preparing business presentations, meeting with potential clients. She learned to negotiate, to pitch, to lead. The scared, naive woman who had trusted Marcus Blackwood was gone, replaced by someone stronger, sharper, harder. But Elena was careful not to let bitterness consume her. She remembered James's advice and focused on building something meaningful. She hired women from backgrounds similar to her own, gave opportunities to people who had been underestimated. She used her pain as motivation but not as her identity. 9 months after starting Veritas, Elena landed her first major client, a prestigious European auction house that wanted to test her system. The trial was a massive success. Her algorithm identified 2 forgeries in their upcoming auction that their experts had missed. The news spread through the art world like wildfire. Soon, insurance companies were calling. Museums wanted demonstrations. Private collectors demanded access to her technology. Veritas Art Systems went from a startup to a serious player in the art authentication industry in less than a year. As Elena's company grew,